Stormbringer issue number 4. So we've got 4 paints today. We're going to bust this open and have a good look through it. So I have been looking forward to this. This set, I mean. Let's have a look. What have we got? Ah, yes, there is a little tiny protector there for the paintbrush. So this is just a starter brush. It is what it is. Some people moan about these brushes saying they're the worst ever. They're not the worst ever, but they are not particularly great, especially the starter brushes. So yeah, but it'll be enough if you're new to the hobby and that kind of stuff. It'll be enough to get you started. Definitely enough to get you started. So we've got 4 paints today. So very much in line with Stormcast, we have Cantor Blue, which is cool. We've got some Auric Flesh there. And we have our first 2 metallics. Retributor Armour and Lead Belcher. 2 classic paints there. So a very good start for our collection. If you have collected magazines from Warhammer before, the Partwork stuff, you will already have some Cantor Blue if you hadn't run out of it. You definitely have a load of Lead Belcher and Retributor Armour, but I don't think we've had Auric Flesh before. I may be wrong. I'm pretty sure actually we might have got it in premium content for Mortal Realms. But if you weren't a premium subscriber before, I don't think you'll have this. But here we go. Battle games in the age of Sigmar. So your first paints, learn to paint your models and more combat rules. You've built your models and tried them in battle. With this issue, you'll now get to paint them. All you need to do is follow the guides. Meanwhile, you'll be able to delve into the world of Warhammer with a new story and a new battle to play. Happy hobbying. And actually, from here, it looks like there's not much content really. So we'll read about Skyheld. But we may have quite a, yes, we have got quite an extended paint guide, which is cool. Set up your paint area. And then Stormcast Eternals and Crawl Boys. And then we will play Rend and Damage. So Rend is kind of, it removes from your enemy's armor, so that you'll be able to start, so that it will make it harder for them to save, to make saving throws and that kind of thing. I remember playing Stormcast Eternals some time ago, and it was one of my first AOS games. It's quite a big game as well. There's a lot of stuff and that kind of thing. And I was really happy because my models had lots of Rend. And yeah, my first game was against Nighthaunt, who, well, they're ghosts. So there was no negative Rend for any of them. So yeah, it blew up in my face immediately. And then we've got the Unleashed Fury. So that's our playthrough. Okay, so Skyheld. I actually know nothing of Skyheld, so this is good. Hidden deep in the mountains of Ramat's Spine is a place of wonder, terror, and ancient secrets. This is Skyheld, a colossal once-lost library of the ancient Draconith that is now a sprawling city home to many scholars and pioneers. Skyheld's greatest treasure is its library. Housed within the seemingly endless vaults beneath the city, the store of knowledge contains secret wisdom from the age of myth. Stored on long scrolls kept within cases of beast bone. Powerful secrets are found deep in the library. Knowledge prospectors brave forgotten and cunning traps as they plunder the lower reaches for vital scrolls. Okay, so now we get kind of one of our first kind of alternative paints, you could say, for Stormcast Eternals. So this one is the Iron Thanes, who I've never heard of before. The Iron Thanes are persistent predators who use the weather as a weapon. They defend Skyheld from invaders by luring them into high mountains raging blizzards, and treacherous ice fields. Only when the enemy is exhausted and half frozen do the Iron Thanes attack. They fall upon their enemy in a hail of furious strikes and storm-charged arrows before fading into icy mist. And then we've got the fungal threat. Anyone watching The Last of Us at the moment will know all about the fungal threat. Many dark forces covet knowledge found in the heart of Skyheld. Among the most determined are the gloom-spiked gits of the hollow skulls. These grots believe idiocy is a virtue, and all knowledge must be destroyed to the realm, so the realms can become a place of mindless violence. They burrow beneath Skyheld to destroy its precious scrolls. Nice. Rallying the Iron Thanes. You'll be painting your Stormcast Eternals as gold armoured hammers of Sigmar for now. However, you'll get to paint some Iron Thanes of your own in a future issue. All right, brilliant. I look forward to that. Very cool. Right. How to paint. Setting up your paint area. Before you start, it's important to find a good spot in which you can paint. Find somewhere where you can sit comfortably and avoid interruptions. Once you've found a good spot, like a desk or at the kitchen table, gather the essentials shown below and set up your painting area. So what have we got here? So we've got a water pot. You don't need a, well, you need something to put water in. You don't need a Citadel water pot. Citadel paints. You need paints. They don't have to be Citadel ones. A palette pad. You don't need a palette pad. What you do is you can, for those of you who know anything about wet palettes, you can go down that route. I'd suggest if you are just starting out, all you do is you get an old plate or something like that and use that for your palette for now and worry about wet palettes later. Because I feel like if you don't learn the basics without, you know, some of the fancy techniques and that kind of thing, I feel like you will lose the benefit of better things later on. I feel the same about contrast paints as well, by the way. Contrast paints are fantastic. I love them. I do most of my painting with, well, I don't paint very much. And in fact, I've got a lot of videos coming up about painting very, very soon. It's my project I'm working on. It's my baby. But we'll get there soon. But there'll be lots and lots of paint stuff that maybe you won't be, set in a way that you wouldn't expect, but I'll get onto that. That project starts in about a month or so. But certainly things like contrast paints and that are great. I would personally tell you to learn a general painting system with normal paints first before you get into contrast, because you will learn a lot about general painting if you do it that way, rather than just cutting straight to the cheat codes, let's say. You will need paper towel, absolutely. You will need brushes, not necessarily Citadel ones. Although, to be fair, at this stage, if you are just starting out, your starter brush is fine. And you'll obviously need your Stormbringer magazine. Having a good source of light is really important when painting. It lets you see the models properly. Spaces with lots of natural light, such as near a window, are ideal. If it's dark out or you can't find a spot with natural light, you can use a lamp while painting your models. And most people, no, I say most people, I only ever paint in the evenings. It's the only time I ever get to do it. Having said that, not everyone in their hobby is a man in his 40s with other things to do. Okay, paint area essentials. Oh, actually, this is pretty cool. Once you've found a well-lit, comfortable area in which to paint your models, you should set up some key tools as shown below. So a water pot, always keep a water pot or mug filled with clean water. So perfect, yeah. You don't need that. You don't need the Citadel pot. Paint palettes. Don't paint your model straight from the pot. Instead, use a palette pad or other appropriate surface as a palette when you paint. This will give you a place to portion out your paint, mix new colours, or thin down the paint you're working with. Perfect. Then it's got a little bit of information about different types of brushes. So starter brushes, a base brush, dry brush, and layer brush, and then a texture spreader. What I would say is that for this collection now, you probably don't need to run out and buy a whole load of different brushes, but I would say this starter brush, look after it. So don't get your paint all the way up to the end of the brush and covering the edge there. Make sure it's cleaned properly after every use and that kind of thing. Try and look out for it there. Try and look after it for now until you're ready to move on to something different. Base brushes, dry brushes and layer brushes are cool, but you'll almost certainly get new brushes when we get new paints. So I'm assuming that when we get our first shades, we'll get our first shade brush. Same with dry brushes and yeah, and base, and you know, more base paints and that kind of thing. Okay, right. So I can't believe I'm spending so long on just the how to paint guide. But it's interesting anyway. It's good to refamiliarize ourselves, see how much they tell us to do. For those of us who've done a bit of this before, which is probably most of the people that are watching this, just see how much they're telling us to do aligns with what we actually do. Gathering our paints, so shaking and opening your paint pots. So it's well known that these pots are prone to drying out your paints. So they're all sealed very nicely. You'll have to shake them very vigorously before they're ready to use. But when you're finished, make sure that you completely close this pot, because if you don't, the paint inside will dry up and go lumpy and all that horrible stuff. And if you're like me, you can even take things to the next step and decant your paints into these bottles. These are dropper bottles, and they yeah, they are easier to portion out the paint that you need. This will stop them from drying out. Yeah, be careful with these Citadel paints because they can dry out. Make sure that lid gets closed properly. Holding your brush, basically hold it as you would a pen or a pencil. Taking paint from the pot, dip the brush into a pot until there is paint halfway up the bristles. Do not submerge the brush in paint. What that will do is when it dries, some of the paint, if it's clogged down there, will start to expand. These kind of, the hairs on the brush will start to push outwards. Yeah, and very quickly your paintbrush will become unusable. So a loaded brush, when loaded with paint, your brush should look like this. Simply dip it back into the pot when you need more paint. By the way, when they're talking about not getting paint up to the top there, I think it's called the ferrule. Yeah, I think that's right. It can actually be quite difficult not to do that when you first start painting. Certainly use these brushes. Look after them as much as you can, but certainly use them to learn your techniques. As if that wasn't obvious. Okay, how to paint. Undercoating Stormcast Eternal. First, you'll need to paint your Vindicators and Knight Arcanum with 3 thin layers of Retributor armor, covering the entire body of the model. You do not need to undercoat the bases of the models, and you won't be painting the rocks and slabs on the bases just yet either. Yeah, you can see from these videos actually just how crappily the paint will go on if you don't prime these models first. Patchy first coat. To be fair, on here it shows what your first, second and third coats will look like, and yes, there is very clearly a good progression there. I have to say your model shouldn't look like that after the first coat. Okay, same deal for undercoating the Cruel Boys. Pull the brush. So actually, let's go through these individually. Pull the brush down and paint your models. Focus on one area at a time and take breaks between sections if needed. Number 2 is a patchy first coat. Don't worry if the first coat is a bit patchy. It's better to build up several thin coats of paint than clog up the details of the model. True enough. And then second coat, after the first coat is dried, you will find the second and third coats much easier to apply as they now have paint to stick to. So I know people who, when they receive these, they'll dip them into soapy water and get, you know, a toothbrush sometimes and start cleaning them. That's because there is such a thing called, what is it called? I think it's called releasing agent. So basically it's something that goes inside the mold to help these kind of separate from the mold when the plastic is being injected to it. And that can sometimes interfere with kind of your painting onto the surface. So I know people who do clean these with a toothbrush and soapy water, but at the same time, I don't do it, and I've never noticed the problem, to be honest with you. Okay, so first coat dry. Your model should look like this after the first coat. The whole model has been painted gold with a bit of grey plastic still visible. After the second coat, you'll have a much stronger layer of colour. The model should look like this when the coat is dry. And when the third coat is dried, the model should look gold all over with no grey plastic showing underneath. It takes about 5 minutes for each coat of paint to fully dry. It might look dry sooner, but try to avoid any new coats before 5 minutes. While one model is drying, you can use the time to paint another one. By the time you're done, the first model will probably be dry. And then it basically gives us the same deal for the crawl boys using the Auric Flesh. Introduction to base coating. Thinning your paints. Your paints work best and will go further if you thin them with a little water. This will help them flow better and cover your models more evenly. Follow the steps below to properly thin your paints for base coating. So, add paint to a palette. Scoop a couple of blobs of paint onto the palette using your brush, taking care not to clog up the bit where the bristles meet the handle. Dip the brush in water. Don't use dirty paint water, as this could spoil the colour of your paints. And combine the water and paint on a palette. Dip the wet brush into the paint palette and mix it up. You will feel the paint grow thinner and easier to spread around. Okay, then this goes on to the Cantor Blue and the Lead Belcher, and basically goes through base coating the stuff that you've already covered in your Retributor armour, but doing the separate bits you will need for your other colours. But all pretty basic, to be honest with you. It's got some stuff about painting the base details as well. So that's cool. So your Vindicators and Knight Arcanum will look like that when you're finished the paints from this issue. So on these ones, we just get the Retributor armor, the Cantor Blue, and a bit of Lead Belcher. And then we've got the Gut Rippers, Killer Boss, and Stab Grot. And basically these have got Auric Flesh and Lead Belcher on them, except for on the base of the Killer Boss, there's a dead Stormcast, so he'll need a little bit of Retributor armor on him. Then we've got the learning aspect, so we've got rend and damage. So a rend of 0, if a weapon has no number listed for its rend characteristics, that means you don't modify the save roll against attacks made by this weapon. The Valedictor's stave held by the Knight Arcanum has a rend of -1. This means you must subtract 1 from any save rolls against attacks made by this weapon. So it shows there, if you roll a dice, it's got rend -1. So I rolled a 1, so that would effectively become 0. A 2 would become 1. A 6 would become 5. So with damage, the Storm Spears wielded by the Vindicators have a damage characteristic of 1. It will take 6 attacks that hit wound. And are not saved to slay the Killer Boss and Stab Grot. The Boss Hacker held by the Killer Boss has a damage characteristic of 2. Each attack that wounds and is not saved will slay a Vindicator model outright, because they can take 2 wounds each. then it goes through the attack sequence and then into our playthrough, Unleashed Fury. This playthrough will be covered on a separate video with the other playthroughs from the first 4 issues. Then it just goes through the back and forth between, oh actually the battle, who's in the battle this week? So this week we've got all the models we've had so far. So the Knight Arcanum and our 5 Vindicators up against 10 Gut Rippers and our Killer Boss with Stab Grot. So our Gut Rippers have 2 wounds each and save on a 5+. And Knight Arcanum has 6 wounds and saves on a 3+. Stave, number of attack dice. So let's do a little test here. So it rolls. The Knight Arcanum rolls 3 dice in attack. All right, he hits on a 3+ and wounds on a 3+. So there you go. There's our 3 dice. We've rolled 2 that are a 3+ and 1 is a 1. So we discard that one, and then we roll these 2 again, looking for 3s again, which is the wound. And there you go. So both have gone through. Now, if we were up against the Gut Rippers, they would be rolling to save on a 5+. And there you go, double 6. They saved both attacks. They take no damage. God, I wish I could get these 6s when I'm actually playing. So yeah, pretty cool. Vindicators make 2 attacks each. So 5 Vindicators, that means they'll roll 10 dice. And 3+ hit and wound there as well. So very cool stuff. Cover that again soon. Okay, so then coming up, the next issue that I review will be issue number 5. Where we'll be looking at the new Praetor Prime miniature. So I very much look forward to that. And then issue number 6, that's going to be our Hobgrot Slitters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 of them. I think we get 2 issues with 10, so we'll have 20 in total. And anyone like me who already has the Age of Sigmar Dominion box will already have 20 of them as well. So you'll have a decent force of these. But that's it for this week. Thanks very much. So that's the first 4 issues done, under our belt, reviewed and out there in the wild. So I hope you're enjoying the coverage. Please drop a subscribe if you haven't already, because I'm here for the next 76 issues plus more if that's what we get. So I know that Mortal Realms and Warhammer 40k Conquest had 80 issues each. I know that Warhammer 40k Imperium, which is still going right now, was slated as 80 issues, but they've re-upped for another 10. So it's going right through to 90 issues in total. And we'll see how Stormbringer goes. So 80 currently, and we'll see if they add more in the end. But thanks very much for watching, guys. Much appreciated. I hope you stick with me, and I'll see you again for issue 5 soon enough. See you later.